I'm guessing you like beer, but are you pouring it correctly? I'm Cameron Lockwood with Chowhound, and I'm gonna show you how I pour beer to keep you from doing it wrong. There's 3 common ways to pour beer. We're gonna start with a can first. The can we're gonna use is a hazy IPA, and we are going to pour it into a glass. All beers tend to have a little bit of a different carbonation and a head to them, whether it's a IPA, a lager, a stout, and even a sour. We're gonna start by rinsing the glass. This does one of 2 things. It helps lubricate to allow for a smooth pour of a beer, and it also gets rid of debris and particles, so that way it doesn't tamper with the actual head of the beer itself, causing it to overreact. Once we have the glass rinsed out, now we can open up the beer. Next thing we're gonna do with our rinsed glass is we're just gonna hold it at a slight angle, probably about 45 degrees. And then I like to just very gently pour the beer down the side of the glass, lightly, not too fast, just so I can see my head pouring, and just make sure that it's not building up too quickly. I like to keep an even, consistent pace, make sure I'm always staying right above the head. There could be many reasons that you want to pour beer into a glass. It's different for everybody. I feel like aromatically it opens up the beer, and I get my nose into the beer a little bit more, which really enhances the experience for me. And that's exactly how I would pour my hazy, nothing to it. That's beer from a can. Now let's move on to a bottle. Once again, we have our glass rinsed out, just to ensure the integrity of the beer. And we're gonna go ahead and open up our bottle. So we'll go ahead and, similar concept, take the beer. Depending on the type of beer, you might be able to pour it a little bit faster or slower, especially depending on the carbonation level. So, I tend to think that like a lager and a Pilsner, they don't produce as much of a head as like a pale ale or just a regular IPA. I think that it tends to be a little bit more forgiving. A beer like this, where you're not as concerned with the head getting out of control with the pour, there's a couple different ways. I showed you the way of doing it at the 45-degree angle. A lot of times too, you can even tilt it this way and just hit the side of the glass, getting a little bit more of a head out of a beer that might not pour with much of a head. There's always more than one way to skin a cat. One of the reasons why I think a good head is so important to me is I feel like it does something with trapping in and keeping the carbonation right, but also it's just something comforting about the mouthfeel of when you take that first sip. Well, damn, that's a different experience right there. Let's talk about draft lines a little bit. Let's say you're one of the few people that have the opportunity of having a draft line at your house. Not a huge difference. I would say if you don't know a lot about draft lines, just make sure that your pressure levels are set properly for the type of beer you're gonna pour out of it. They do tend to vary, so if you wanna have an optimal pouring experience, just make sure you get your levels set properly. There's gonna be a lot more room for error here. There typically tends to be, especially when you're talking about your first pour. If you're pouring back to back, a lot of things come into play here. The length of how long your run is, especially in the relationship to the pressure. But also the first couple beers, they're always gonna pour a little bit differently than once you start rolling. Most of us don't have these insanely sophisticated systems at home anyway. I know one of the benefits of having it is maybe you're able to serve a lot more people and keep the beer fresh, and maybe you're able to keep it, to an optimal temperature that you like. Really just depends, there's always something for everybody out there. But we're gonna go ahead and pour this first beer. One thing to note is I like to keep a water bottle near me so I can make sure that I'm cleaning off the outside of the glass as I'm pouring it if I have any overages. Like I said, some of that first pour of the day usually can be it can be a wild one. So here we go. So I like to come in here at the same 45-degree angle, just gonna kind of let it rip. Looks like it's pouring very well today. Sometimes, I control the speed depending on how the beer's pouring. We're gonna get it close to the top here. Gradually go from the 45-degree angle and kind of get it more upright as I get closer to the top. Make sure that there's no stickiness for the consumer around the side of the glass, and you have your pour. So most people have pint glasses, but we also have our tulip glasses here, which are 12-ounce glasses, not the same as a pint, but for the right type of beer, it can really enhance the experience, especially in the way that it traps the flavor. We're gonna pour one into a tulip glass. It's already rinsed, ready to go. So here we go. Gonna try a different style beer here. Same 45-degree angle to start. We're gonna kind of just let this one slow down a bit. This one gets a little crazy, and then we're just gonna kind of push this head out a little bit. Make sure we got a nice even pour here. Now this is something that's gonna have pretty big head, but you notice how it starts to just chill out a little bit. It's got a nice, beautiful little look here. It's not too much. In hindsight, pouring beer isn't that difficult. If I can do it, anyone can. Whether it's a bottle, can, draft, just make sure you know what kind of beer you're pouring. Just don't try to rush it and overthink it, and you'll be a pro in no time. Cheers.